And we are live. So I'm gonna let somebody else moderate if they want, just because my voice sounds like Donald Duck.
I can do it unless Herb wants to.
Chris, it's all you.
All right, all right. So here we are. Just real briefly, Dr. Jones, thanks again for hosting these things for us. This is our last one, so you are free after this night.
Hey, more importantly, y'all are going to be free after about a week.
Amen
Yes.
to that.
So let's go ahead and get started. I'm just going to kind of work here left to right on my screen. So Herb, do you have any questions?
Yes. So, God, this one threw me for a big loop. So, Dr. Jones, and I know.
Hey, sorry, really quick. Can other people see the screen? I can't see the screen. This is Sarah. Hey, guys.
Hey,
Can other people see what's sharing? I can't see anything.
Nothing is being shared, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. I thought Chris said he was walking through his screen. I was like, okay, all right.
So so I had a question it's throwing me for a loop because two things I was trying to do, and it was going from the lecture. And if you go back to the lecture, and I can't remember exactly which one where it was, but we talked about overhead applied. And so
Right.
It was the example that you gave us. So overhead applied, I'm confused because I have from what we got from the case is a actual number. Then I did a flexible budget one because on all the graphs that you had picked, like when you drew that little bar at the bottom, we're going from the flexible budget.
Right.
What
You
is
got to
that?
you've got to prepare flexible budget because in this case they estimated you can see off let me go off table 1.
Right.
I think it's table 1.
Uh-huh.
I'm having trouble seeing today. I guess it's been a long day. Table 1 is based on that was your production budget originally based on 10,000 bicycles.
Right.
But they really had 10,008.
Right.
So if you don't flex the budget to 10,008, then of course they're going to be over budget because they did more than you worked more, right? Just think of labor. If you built an extra 800, it's going to cost you more. So every variance would be really unusable and bad because you're comparing a static budget of 10,000 units times whatever rate, dollars. Put that in dollars. You're comparing that to an actual number and you're always going to be bad. So the flexible allows you to say, what would my budget have been if table 1 was basically redone at 10,800 units instead of 10,000?
Right. So I had a question.
So you've got to prepare a flexible budget or else you can't compute any of the variances.
Okay. So that's where I'm at. But here's my question. I can't get the math to work unless I do one thing. I flex the entire fixed cost.
Well, why would you flex the fixed cost?
Well, that's what I'm saying. But at that point,
whether I produce 1 unit or I produce 10,000 units, a fixed cost by definition will stay the same.
Right. But when I only flex the variable portion, and like I said, I don't want to get too specific on the call because I know you don't want us to give away the answer. But I think there was a reason that the other cost, and there was a comment in there that said 2/3 of that was variable. So then, I hope I don't give too much away, but then that means variable costs are 500,000. In the overhead section,
that's fine, and we did that on the last call too. Yeah, let me back up a second for a thing. Where you're talking about is your overhead variance at this point.
yes.
Okay, well, let's think about this. When you're walking through this, in case some people may end up answering some questions that others may have here, right? The first question says compute the direct cost and the overhead variances. So really what we end up with is we're really ending up with a lot of different variances, okay? I mean, you're going to end up computing a direct material and a price variance for the frame assembly. You're going to actually have what? I'm looking at for framing, you're going to have a steel tubing, a paint one, and a labor. So you're actually going to have 2 direct material variances and a labor variances for frame. For the wheel assembly, you're going to have a material and a labor variance. For the final assembly, you're going to have a material and a labor variance. So you're computing, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4 material variances, 3 labor variances before we even get to your question. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you've computed all of those, hopefully flexing the budget. Because
Okay.
like just look at frame assembly. If I have a steel tubing budget, I'm reading off Exhibit 1. If I have a steel tubing budget of 3.3 million
Mhm.
for frame assembly, and I produce that, and that's for 10,000 bicycles, I better use more than 3.3 million actually, right? Or
Correct.
you would think, because I produced 800 more
Right.
than that. So when you compute that material variance, that labor variances, all of those you are flexing out.
Yep.
You're definitely going to flex those variances to 10,008. So I just want to kind of address that up front, because I know some people are probably going to have some questions about material and labor. But now your question is dealing with overhead, and overhead, by every stretch of the imagination, we went over this. I mean, we did this a lot on the last call, is definitely going to cause, that's going to cause the biggest headache. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, if you get the variances, you fly through the first ones, hopefully. Overhead, you kind of get stuck. And yeah, I don't think we're giving anything away. If it talks about rent, staff, depreciation, your other cost in there are what, 2/3 variable. So if 2/3 of those if 2/3 are variable, what does that leave you? You say 500,000, I think is what you said,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So you end up with 500,000 of that being fixed. So if you end up with 500,000 fixed, then 7,000 is going to be, or 700. Wait, I don't know how to say that. Yeah, no, I mean, if you have 500,000 variable, I'm sorry, I said that backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
500 is variable, 700 would be fixed, right?
Oh.
Total overhead, yes.
Yeah, of your total overhead of the 1.2 million. Because you have on Exhibit 1, you have 1.2 million.
Oh yeah. So 7. I'm sorry. You're going faster than my brain works. So yeah. So yes, 5 and 7.
Yeah. So of the 1.2 million, I mean, so you're going to end up there with 700,000 of fixed, 500,000 of variable cost. So
Right.
So yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. So then when you flex it, the only number that would change would be variable cost, because fixed are
Absolutely.
fixed, right?
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay.
So really, I mean, so the fixed are fixed. So when you go calculate, I think when we calculated those variances, there were draw the chart out. This goes back to lecture 9, right?
Yep.
And it's not in the slides, because that was one that I hand drew, because
Yep.
I didn't feel like actually getting a computer and drawing the little lines. And y'all too. If y'all don't feel like drawing it out on a Word document, that's fine. Draw it by hand. Take a picture. Attach it to the file when you send it in. I mean, I can deal with handwritten stuff too. Scan it, whatever.
Okay. Good.
But at some point, you're going to have your fixed overhead, and then you need to figure out what your variable overhead is, right?
Right.
So you need a variable overhead rate. And if you know that 700,000 is fixed, 500,000 is variable, you can come up with a budgeted variable overhead rate. Now I'm not going to tell you what it is,
Right.
but given that you've split those costs now between 700 fixed, 500 variable, based upon your original budget of 10,000, you can come up with a variable overhead rate that you would then just multiply by whatever your volume levels are. So to flex that out, multiply that by your 10,008 volume.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
only part that flexes is going to be the variable overhead.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay, that's what I had.
The part that's going to kill you, I'll go ahead and say it because I know somebody's going to have the question. That's one part of it. So so fixed overhead plus your variable overhead times the volume, right? And with that volume being flexed, I think is what you were talking about.
Right.
Now, when you get into the overhead absorbed, okay, you got to go back and think about when you calculated that the initial overhead rate. So we're back into, we're still back into lecture 9 where we're talking about budgeted overhead and those rates. You're calculating an overall budgeted rate at the beginning of the period. So your overhead, managers like to know this budget overhead rate, right? We like to know that if I'm going to use these overhead items, how much are you charging me? And so we know, and I'll go ahead and give you the budgeted overhead rate. Y'all will get to this. If we think we have, from figure 1, we think we have 1.2 million of of overhead cost for 10,000 units,
Mm-hmm.
then I've got a rate of 120. 1.2 million divided by 10,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my overhead is being absorbed at a rate of $120. So every time I use a unit, so every unit is going to absorb $120 of overhead,
Okay.
right? Now, because that's based upon that is my you can call it the standard rate if you want to call it that. I think we called it the standard rate. Your
Yes.
standard overhead rate.
That's the standard overhead rate. Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The other
I was doing it off of I flexed and then did the math, and I couldn't get things to line up.
Yeah, no, yeah, because
So
once
I'm
you
with
flexed
now.
it, you're not.
Okay.
Your standard is based at the beginning of the period.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. And so the last question I had on that, so if we go back up to all the cost variances, this little chart that we draw, going back to the variances, did you want, as we talked about, like 4 material variances, did you want the graph on each one or just calculate a variance? Because I just put it in an Excel.
Yeah, no, if you just do it in Excel and you can do formulas, you can do graphs.
Okay.
I have them drawn out personally. I have them drawn out. I've been unable to contact my TA. I was making the joke last time. I said I'm gonna grab my TA and make them put them in the computer for me because I just don't feel like doing it.
Yeah.
I've just been able. I can't find my TA. They're hiding out from me. So hopefully I'm gonna run into him tomorrow. If I run into him tomorrow, I'm gonna get him just to try to put it in a computer file. So I will send you. Once he makes one, he can copy the other ones. But I'm gonna try to make him make me out the graphs that I can do that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna scan it and have you the pictures when I send you all my thoughts.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like making those out, I mean, I don't feel like making them out personally. Draw them, scan them, or just put it in Excel and do a formula. I mean, it doesn't matter. Graphically, just lets me see it easier.
Okay. I can do that. But you'll see like that in that, like your occasion, we'll have 4 material graphs showing the variances.
Right. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah, I didn't do it that way. I just, like I said, I did an Excel spreadsheet and mapped it out, but I can definitely draw the graphs. I was drawing the graphs on the overhead variances because there was the extra section in here that I didn't know how to put into an Excel spreadsheet.
Right, yeah, and don't worry about drawing them out. I mean, if you've got the answers you're happy with, I mean, I can read it either way.
Okay.
It's just a matter. I mean, for me to see, I draw them out. So I've drawn them out. So I might as well either give you what I drew out, or like I said, if I can get my TA to make it prettier for me, I'll make them make it prettier. But no, I mean, I can read it either way. But like the first time I read it, I will draw it. Like when I go to grade these.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have them drawn out, I would draw out what you told me just because that's the way I see it. Right. You don't have to do that, though. I mean, everybody's different. I mean, I'm just visual. That works. The graphs work for me, so that's the only way. Honestly, that's the only way I can think about it. You start giving me numbers, you start giving me formulas, I get confused as to what goes where. What do I compare to what? I draw it out on a graph. I know the actuals on the left. I know I'm going more and more budget as I go right. And so it helps me visualize it and make sure I keep everything straight.
All right. Thank you very much. That answered my questions. Thank you.
Cool.
Terry, you have anything before you die?
I'm nothing on tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Galen, I think you're here. You have any questions?
No. I'm good.
All right. I think this 251, I think it's Tara. Tara, you have any questions?
Hey, I don't know if you meant Sarah, but no, I don't.
I did mean Sarah. Sorry.
I had the same. No, you're good. I had the same one that Herb did about drawing them out or Excel being fine. Some of that was some of my questions, so I'm good.
Hey, can anyone hear me? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yep, we hear you.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I have to call in because I'm not good with even using the Skype thing. For question number 2, when it's talking about the performance, I could totally be missing this, but are we just talking about in relation to cost and not with like revenue generation or using the just like total gross sales that it mentions in like the first paragraph?
Yeah, no.
Or-
Just strictly. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think he's talking about the speed of the bicycle, aren't we? On a downhill. It's a joke. It's a joke, guys. Come on.
Yeah, no. No,
Sorry,
yeah,
guys.
strictly cost. On a serious note, strictly cost. I mean, you've just computed. This is really just it's a good exercise that it really jumps on. Think about it. I mean, we've done a lot of allocations and impacting stuff. You're really getting into cost management here. I mean,
Okay.
we've showed you how to allocate. We've shown you how to do all this stuff in previous in the previous stuff. But here we're actually saying, look, compute these variances. Now, as a manager, if I want to manage these costs, you're looking at framing variances, assembly, final assembly. You're looking at all these different variances. Should you be concerned? And if so, what do you direct your attention to? And so what you're going to see, right, the variances will allow you to direct attention to certain areas, maybe some certain interpretations of the variances. I mean, feel free to try to, do you see a story starting to come together? When you look at, certain favorable or unfavorable variances, do you see something that should alert you? Is there something you need to pay attention to? Is there something you need to investigate more? And that's really what that's what
Okay.
that question is. Basically, the question is saying, look at your variances in part one and kind of tell me what you think. If you're given these variances as a manager, what would your reaction be?
Okay.
And then the last question, since you asked it, go to the last one. Are there any purposes for which a total per unit variance would be more useful? I mean, because you've got the big dollar amount functional variances there. Would a per unit one? We didn't really talk about per unit variances in here, but we did when we talked about cost allocation. Talked about what does it look like on a per unit basis, right? I mean, fixed costs are fixed in total but vary per unit. Variable costs vary in total but are fixed per unit. Back in what was that, I think lecture 6, we talked about different cost behavior. So this sort of it's not a very important question in the overall sense of everything, but it does kind of bring in right there at the very end this idea of, well, if I put all of this on a unit basis, which just take your variances and divide them by units, right? I mean, however many units you have, and then you end up with an idea of would a per unit vary? Do you think it'd be helpful to see this in a unit, or do you like seeing it in totals? Basically, is kind of the idea. Strictly an opinion question. Again, don't kill yourself on that last question by any stretch, but it's just a nice little way to get you thinking about totals versus units again.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So
Right.
Dr. Jones, if I'm hearing you correct, that question 2, I mean, obviously the calculations in 1 are key, but then the meat of what we're writing up is question 2. Is that fair?
Yeah, look, and when you say meat, yes, that's where your opinion comes in. That's where your analysis comes in. I think that's very fair. In terms of quantity, I think your calculations in 1 will be the overarching,
Sure.
bulk of the paper. You know what I mean? Because it just takes time to do calculations, right?
Yep.
But your interpretation, I mean, like, I can't imagine once you look at those variances, you're not going to write up 3 pages on what an unfavorable variance might be, because you don't know. I mean, ultimately at the end, you can't give me you can give me ideas, you can give me a story, you can give me something plausible, possible interpretations, but you really don't know, right?
Yeah, it's all speculation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all speculation. So, so there's no sense. You might look at a variance and just give me, it might just be, the answer to question 2 might be, a few sentences. It could be. It doesn't have to be, here's a material variance. It says, hey, it's favorable. It looks like we're doing a good job or bad job. It looks like this may be happening. It could possibly be blank, blank, blank. I don't see question 2 necessarily taking up a ton of space.
Okay. Yep.
I think question 1 will definitely take up more, especially if you draw them out. Question 1's going to take up a lot of space. If you just do the math formulas, okay, You've got what, 4 material variances, 3 labor variances, and overhead variances. I think you're gonna spend most of your time probably calculating the variances, and then the judgment part will really be question 2.
Okay.
Because like if you're looking at a material variance and you're saying, well, we have a material variance because the workers did something, and I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Skilled workers. At what point does a material variance really a labor variance, right? I mean, I just want to make sure that you're giving me plausible interpretations.
Yep. Okay.
All right. I'm just scrolling through numbers here because some of these names aren't on my screen. So I have a 404. Any question from area code 404?
Well, that's the ATL.
Oh, all right. ATL. There you go.
Not me.
All right.
No, I think you're talking about me. I'm actually in LA, but I kept my Atlanta number. No, I don't have any questions because you just covered everything I had a question on.
Okay.
All right. Perfect. I got a 443 area code. Caller, go ahead. Anyone?
Got nothing.
And then I got a 901 caller.
901 is me. That's Sarah.
Oh, okay,
Good.
Sarah. All right. All right. Did I miss anyone? Anyone have any other questions for Dr. J?
Just thank you. Can't believe this is it.
That's awesome. Hey guys, just so we wrap this up, I'll let you know I'm working on Dakota. I've just been, my undergrads are killing me. They just keep asking questions, but as of tomorrow, I'm not answering any more undergrad questions. I mean, it's like we're going into finals. So I'm working on Dakota. I hope to get Dakota back to you guys by the end of this week. Then there'll be then we're in finals for my undergrad. So once the mile high starts coming in, you'll see these last ones turn around pretty quick. So I know some of you guys need grades for reimbursement, that type of thing. Those will be really quick. Again, Dakota hopefully by the end of this week it should happen by the end of this week. I don't know why it would not. Mile high will be, so if you get mile high in, you'll see the super fast turnaround on that.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing your time. We all very much appreciate it. We know how valuable it is these days. So thank you.
No worries.
Yep. Quick question. So we've been posting this call on the discussion board since all the boards are now closed. What, TJ, unless you've got an idea of where to post this?
Is 10 closed?
I thought it was.
I think
All of these are actually posted on YouTube.
Okay.
So all the videos are available.
I thought if lecture 10 is closed, it should not be.
Well, I would say there were actually, and I was glad I looked in 2 different places, because in one place it said it closed last night, and then it says the grades for discussion are open until the 10th, so there was a discrepancy, but I got it in last night. But yeah, it's closed because I was just going to look at something.
Okay, hold on a second.
So you thinking
I'll
it's supposed to be
reopen. I
till
can
the end of
definitely
the week?
reopen 10. I'm clicking on it right now, trying if I can get the tab to open, and I can go back and I can reopen 10 because 10 shouldn't be.
Yeah, 10 showed it was locked to December 2nd.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I might have messed up a date when I set that all up and early. Hold on, I'm almost there. Unless you security guys make me do duo authentication and go sign away my first key.
Triple authentication.
I'm not talking about security right now.
Oh, are we triple authenticating stuff now?
Oh, yes.
It's okay.
Retinal
The funny
scan.
the funny part, my son was here for Thanksgiving, and he had to do. He logged into the. He's at Tech. He logged into his Tech server on his phone, and it made him do duo authentication to log in on his phone. So they sent him a text on his phone to log in from his phone.
Right.
Yep. At some point, I'm like, okay, that's just. I mean,
It's just you're redundant. Yeah.
yeah, I'm on the phone. Okay, so it doesn't do any good. Yeah, so 10 closed. Yeah, I'll open 10 back up until, I'll give you another week on 10. That shouldn't have closed that quick.
Thank you.
So, hold on. Shoot. You should see that shortly, because I am editing that one right now.
I can look on
If I can figure out how to make it work again. Yes, okay, so if you check it shortly, that should be open. Crap, just for the sake of argument, when is this one's due? Is it due like next Monday?
Yeah,
case
midnight Sunday. Yeah.
It's due on the 9th. So what I'll do is I'll leave this one till the 9th at midnight. How about that? So I just added a week to that.
Awesome.
So 10, you should see lecture 10 open for another week.
Yep, it's open.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me know. So again, so this one can post on there, and that can help with any of that.
Great.
Yeah, thanks. That'd be great.
No problem.
I think it's a wrap.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.